Time for another edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Joining us, as always, Jeffri Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. We are talking Chiefs wideouts. If Rashee Rice is suspended and Hollywood Brown is out, what kind of offense will the Chiefs actually be fielding for the opener against the Ravens? That's the doomsday scenario for sure. We'll talk some running backs. Carson Steele, is he now a lock for this team? Does Clyde Edwards-Helaire have a spot left on this team? Was there anything to see in Louis Rees-Zammit? What's the Chiefs' number 2 cornerback spot look like? How dependent upon Chris Jones is this entire Chiefs defense? Should the Chiefs have interest in Matthew Judon or Haason Reddick? Should Kingsley Suamataia have played more than just a couple of series in this game? We're talking about it right now on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeffri Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is the sports columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by David Starnes Allstate Insurance, covering all the important things in your world: home, business, life, and even the fun stuff as well. Motorcycle, boat, ATV, you name it. Get with Dave and he'll have you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call, visit them online, or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave. He'll give you peace of mind today for the things in your life most important to you. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you, Curtis. Let's talk about the receiving core. Hollywood Brown picking up an injury in the preseason game last Saturday night. Not good news for the Kansas City Chiefs, and with the suspension that some still think is going to come before this season gets started. What does an offense look like, Jeff, that doesn't have either one of those guys when they take on the Baltimore Ravens on that home opener? How effective can that offense be, and what does it look like?
Well, it can be effective because they got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce still being a part of it, but it certainly would be diminished in a lot of ways. We've all come into this season anticipating a much more efficient, productive offense than what we saw last year for most of the season. And when you're taking away two guys who would have been 3 of your biggest targets, it's hard to imagine how that plays out well for the Chiefs as far as putting up points. Like, it's, again, I have high hopes for Xavier Worthy. McCole Hardman's been around the block. Justin Watson's been a role player. But really, I mean, when you're talking about a team that really is hoping to put up a lot of points and is asking a lot of its quarterback on every snap, you go out there without 2 of your best players, it's going to sting. And I know there's been a lot of talk about maybe Rashee Rice won't be suspended this year. I keep hearing that the league wants to have this done with this year. And so it would not surprise me at all if in a week or two we heard he's going to be down. And if that happens, yeah, it's going to be a tough go against a Ravens team that's very good defensively and can create a lot of problems for you.
Yeah, Sam, what do you think it looks like if they do get the suspension on Rashee Rice before week 1? And I've talked to several people. We heard Clark Hunt, at Chiefs training camp say the protocol, or what do you say, the precedent for this is that they wait until the legal process is played out. I've heard that echoed by other people within the organization. Now, whether they're just following the leader's, lead, following the owner's lead on this one, or they really believe it, or they've talked to people in the league office. I don't know, but that's what they're saying. But a lot of other people are saying just what Jeff is. They want this done. They don't. We'll wait and see. We've still got time for that. What do they look like offensively, though, without both of those guys?
Yeah, I mean, you look at their wide receiver core, and it's worse than last year if those two guys aren't part of it. I mean, you add Xavier Worthy, but Rashee Rice is their number one wide receiver. Even with the additions that they've had this year with Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, like Rashee Rice is their number one wide receiver. If you're down your number one wide receiver, Hollywood Brown's your number two wide receiver. And by the way, better than anyone not named Rashee Rice on your roster last year. I recognize like adding Xavier Worthy is not nothing, but it doesn't overcome what you've lost. But specifically, the Chiefs offense was acquiring these players to change the way they move the football down the field. And I've mentioned many times how bad they were throwing the ball deep down the field, that Patrick Mahomes was the league's worst rated passers on deep throws. But guess what? They had the most drops on deep throws. They had the highest drop percentage on deep throws. So that's a quarterback stat that should be attributed to the wide receivers. And Marquise Brown was part of that solution, the biggest part of that solution. And if you're missing that, I just think this offense for the first games that they're without him already is in danger of looking a lot like last year. But you add Rashee Rice to that, and a 1 year older Travis Kelce. I mean, yeah, they're still going to have Patrick Mahomes. This is all relative to the offense that we've seen over the past 6 years. Everything we're saying is relative to the Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes combination we're seeing. But given that contrast, I think they would struggle the first couple of weeks. Like Jeff said, I mean, are there two teams that have given the Chiefs more trouble than, I mean, the Ravens have a great defense that gives everybody trouble, especially in the secondary. There's not a defense that's given the Chiefs more trouble than the Bengals have.
Yeah, and coming out of the gates with these two, I mean, that's hell on wheels with Baltimore and Cincinnati for the first couple of them. What are we looking at, Jeff? Xavier Worthy, Justin Watson, and when they go to the third wideout, who you want? Skyy Moore, Justin Ross, Mecole Hardman, Kadarius Toney, Nico.
Are you putting Justin Ross on this team?
I think he's got a shot. I do. I think he's on the outside looking in, but I think he's got a shot.
I would say, look, it's the thing of, I don't want any of those guys to be the top options after Kelce. I'll put it that way. I'd rather have, let's hand it off to Pacheco and see what happens. But two things here. One, if you're without Rice and Brown, I feel like it looks a lot like it did last year when Kelce wasn't available in week one, where you saw the limitations, you saw the struggles. I think it's the same guy. I think it's the same kind of impact, two players for one. The other thing is everybody else in their offense outside of those three guys, Kelce, Brown, and Rice, are really relying on other people to create opportunities for them to be at their best. And that includes Xavier Worthy right now because he's a rookie. It's like when you start taking away guys who were able to create opportunities for others, I just think as an offensive play caller, as a quarterback, it's, Sam mentioned this in the previous podcast, the predictability factor goes way, way up. And I don't know how you can overcome that. They don't have the talent in that room to overcome those kinds of disadvantages because this offense is really built more about Andy Reid's creativity than it is about talent.
What wideouts do you think we'd be looking at in that doomsday scenario there, Sam?
Well, I mean, Jeff's last sentence is a really interesting one because I totally agree with it. And it affects the answer to your question, which is like the Chiefs offense, Andy Reid wants it to be built around his creativity and his quarterback's playmaking skills. The guy that I think maybe should benefit the most from this situation doesn't fit that, and it's Justin Ross. Like, he's just a guy that has a really big catch radius. And by the way, I thought the first couple of weeks of camp, the Chiefs were going to get by and just say, doesn't fit the type of style that Andy Reid likes. And it's not just Andy Reid. Like, Patrick Mahomes does not like throwing in traffic. Carson Wentz is what's funny about this is Justin Ross looks a hell of a lot better with the second team than he does the first team because Carson Wentz will throw it up to him. He'll throw fades to Justin Ross, and he catches them. And I don't know that this quarterback and this coach like to do that. Like, Patrick Mahomes has never been a back shoulder passer, but he's the guy I think because the rest, I don't think Skyy Moore, Mecole Hardman, I would have more confidence throwing to the guy that at least has a large catch radius, even if he can't get major separation. But it's fitting a square peg into a round hole with the Chiefs offense.
Justin Ross just does not create separation in this offense, which is amazing to me because Travis Kelce isn't any faster.
He's got wiggle though. He's got agility that Justin Ross does not have. Like Justin
Still
Ross,
at this age?
Justin Ross runs stiff.
Yeah.
Kelsey also has the ability to read zones, to recognize the way defenses are trying to defend him. Like he can find crevices in a defense, less so than before, sure. But I just think he's got certain mental skill sets and, like I said, the wiggle over the middle of the field that Justin Ross doesn't have. But Justin Ross there's no doubt. I mean, Justin Ross has the biggest catch radius in training camp. There's nobody even that's particularly close to them, because as much as we talked about in the last podcast, they prioritize speed. The catch radius thing is something they feel like they've been able to live without.
Yeah, and they have, because they've been able to get guys open. But, at the goal line, it gets tougher. I mean, I think Ross is a guy they'd love to have, but I don't know that I'm with you. I don't know that they feel like there's only a couple of spots here and there where they can use them. So, Sam, what receivers do you think it would be? What do we think we're looking at lining up? Are we talking about Justin Watson and Xavier Worthy are the starting two, the third wideouts who, the fourth wideouts who?
I'm going to say if those are your two, I think you need somebody that can fill the Rashee Rice role, and I think the guy that they feel like is the backup for that role is Skyy Moore.
Yep, there it is. I think so too. I think it's Skyy Moore's 3, and I think 4 on that. That's where this, the injury to Hollywood Brown does change how you look at the wide receiver.
Yes, let's give the most optimistic view of Skyy Moore. His rookie year, he created separation. And I recognize that because of his final numbers, that would surprise some people. But that was not his issue. It was the point of attack at the catch. He was not good at that. So didn't know the playbook well enough his rookie year. So he wasn't able to get on the field enough. But he did create some separation. He's certainly, by year 3, you would hope he knows the playbook. And so if he can make his first guy miss off the line of scrimmage and get open, like that Rashee Rice role is going to be his best role at least.
I've been at 7 or 8 practices. You've been at many more than me, Sam. Skyy Moore looks better this year. Does he look better to you?
Yes. He's not a standout, but yes, he does look better than.
Looks better. I didn't say he's,
Yes.
I'd say he looks better, right? So
I agree with that.
But has he ever looked bad this time of year, though, before they started playing real games?
Yeah. I mean, I came away from camp going, I'm not sure what they got here. Like the first one, okay. I didn't get it. And then the first time, and I've said this many times, and so I'm beating the drum for those that are regulars. I apologize. But first time I stood there, around an interview session with him, I'm like, wow, small. because the MO was a tackle breaker and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, ooh, boy, I'm not seeing that, because I don't think he's as big as he's listed. So.
He's a giant compared to the other two guys. Compared to Hollywood and Worthy. Put him in a cage match to see who comes out. Probably Skyy Moore.
I love it. We're proudly brought to you here on the Red, Gold, and Bold by David Starnes Allstate Insurance, serving the greater Kansas City area all throughout the Midwest, covering important things like home, business, life. Yep, fun stuff too. Motorcycles, boats, ATVs, you name it. Get with Dave. He'll have you covered. It's not just, all your traditional things, not just about fender benders, beyond traditional safeguards. You can enjoy roadside assistance, transportation expense coverage, auto replacement protection to keep you on the road in style. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. You can give Dave and his crew a call, visit them online, or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave. He'll give you the peace of mind you want right now, today, the things in your life that are the most important. Let's talk running backs. Carson Steele, second best running back on the team. Jeffri Chadiha, true or false?
That's a low bar there, but I know you've been waiting to talk about this for 3 days now. So he looked good. He looked good to me. Yeah, I mean, how could he? You had to be impressed watching him run. Breaking tackles. Like, I hope he makes a team. I think he's got something to him. But I will allude to Sam's point about the receivers when you have 7 of them. How many running backs on this team are really going to carry the football, touch the football, and do the things he does? Now, if he was just somebody, if he was more like a Jarrett McKinnon type guy, I'd be like, hands down lock. But it seems like he's more of a true running back, hand on the ball type guy. I just don't see where you get that many carries outside of Pacheco. I think he's better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I definitely feel like Edwards-Helaire is in danger of losing his job, but I don't see them keeping 4 running backs. And if he's getting the job, it's going to be Clyde's.
Okay. Second best running back on the team is Carson Steele. Is that true or false, Sam?
Give me a situation. I mean, I would say if I need a yard, yes. I mean, he's second. He's the second guy I would go to. On third downs, I don't know what that's going to look like with Carson Steele. I still think I would pick Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Carson Steele in that spot. But to Jeff's point, I mean, he's had a better preseason, including training camp, than Clyde Edwards-Helaire has had. And today he's working with the 1s and 2s. On Monday, he's working with the 1s and 2s. Like, he's gradually moved up the depth chart to where I think he's on the inside of the roster bubble right now. And I know we'll get to Clyde a little bit more in a second, but Steele brings something. I mean, Soren and I had him on our initial 53 before he got the chance to play in the game, and they don't have tackling in preseason. Like, that was the one thing we didn't yet know. Now he's 225 to 230. The scouting suggested that he was going to be a guy that could make people miss by bowling over them. But it was even better than anticipated, especially like these guys who are on the roster bubble are already playing in pressure situations. It's not the same pressure that an NFL opener with all eyes on you might provide, but they're fighting for their lives in these games. Like, the pressure's on him, and he comes out with a performance like that. I mean, it means something. Now, the real key, the one thing you hear from all coaches is consistency. The difference between the best players and the guys that are these fringe guys we're talking about is they do it every rep. And so Carson Steele's got to come out and perform again in week 2 on Saturday.
Yeah, I'll agree with that it's not over right now, for sure. I think he is the second best running back on the team, but I think you make a good point, Sam. Can he catch the ball? If Pacheco can really catch the ball, and he's worked hard on that this offseason, I think that's looked better in his game. I think his pass protection has been better. That takes a little bit of that load off, and maybe you can just be the sledgehammer back behind him. Maybe that's how you give Isaiah Pacheco a little bit of rest. You hammer away with somebody like this. Maybe, and we are going to talk about Clyde here in a second, but Deneric Prince, I mean, I know he was early running with the 2s, but are we sure he was a camp darling last year? Didn't end up making it. Andy Reid, I think if you're going to talk about Carson Steele needs to be good on special teams, well, so does Deneric Prince, right? Like, and probably so does Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I think he fits in a different category. But Deneric Prince is the guy who ran away from the football on the kick return that ended up being a safety. It's not exactly wowing him on special teams. Is the battery in backwards, and Deneric Prince is the guy on the outside looking in.
Yeah, and by the way, as Deneric Prince ran away from the ball, it was very clear they had at least taught that aspect of it, because McCole Hardman is sprinting towards the ball.
Yes.
The rest of the play may have been the confusion, but there was no confusion with McCole Hardman that ball needed to be touched. But yeah, I mean, Deneric Prince you're right about his trajectory. He was the camp darling before the pads came on in the first week of last year's training camp, and bottomed out after the first preseason game. Like, at some point, he's got to put the hype into an actual game film. And I guess if Carson Steele is trying to make the team, and he's suggesting there's only 3 guys going to make the team, I still think it's 4. But if he says there's only going to be 3 guys who make the team, he's got to be saying, what has Deneric Prince done that I haven't done this past week?
You see anything out of
You got 4 running backs?
I do, and it goes into our next topic. But I think it becomes problematic if Isaiah Pacheco goes down, and the only guys you have on your roster are guys who've never played an NFL game before.
Yeah. I think that's legit. Let's talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire right after I tell you about Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater KC area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've solved them since 1994 in Kansas City. Award-winning Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get your lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot cuts down on accidents and keeps your parking lot as safe as possible. One contractor, all things parking lot. That's Gann Asphalt and Concrete. From building it brand new, everything you need, including the drainage system, beautifully surfaced, perfectly striped, signage, concrete bumpers, you name it. One contractor, all things parking lot. Call 816-484-3338. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Clyde Edwards-Helaire does have the NFL experience, right? And is probably the best receiving back. Jeff, would you agree with that he at least opens as the guy most likely to replace Jerick McKinnon?
At one point late last season, he probably was their best receiver for a couple games there. Look, I think he's got a pretty good shot of getting that role. And I understand, look, it's PTSD is a real thing. You know, what he's going through, mental health is a real issue. I don't wish that on anybody. But here's what I'll say. First of all, I think they like him in the locker room. I think that matters a lot to Andy Reid and Brett Veach, that he fits in with this group. He's been here a while. They trust him. He's one of those guys they don't want to give up on. And so that's the one thing I think is the saving grace, that if Carson Steele ends up getting a spot and he ends up getting cut, it's like Carson Steele's going to have to go take it from him. But, yeah, I just I don't know. It's hard to be excited about him. I'll put it that way. With everything that's going on with him, the mental stuff, the way his career has played out, it's hard to be excited about that guy being on your roster too.
Yeah. What does he have a spot on the team, Sam, for the reason you said, because he's got the NFL experience? They at least know they can trust. Listen, I'm with Jeff. I've got great sympathy for the kid and what he's going through, everything like that. But you know, you're trying to win a championship, right? Like, and if you're not available, and what did you have the stat? He missed how many days due to illness last year?
Yeah, I did. I can't recall what the count was because I had done it in February during that Super Bowl week, but it was like 18 or 19, I think, of days of practice that he had missed a year ago. And again, that was possible attribute to his PTSD. I don't know that all of them were, but they were the days that were classified as illness.
But even if it wasn't, he wasn't practicing. So whether it's Kadarius Toney with all his soft tissue injuries, you know, like you can't make the club in the tub. You know, it's really hard to think that, like, okay, he's got it all down if he's not practicing on a regular basis. I get it if you're a vet, Chris Jones, certain guys, you know, L'Jarius Sneed didn't practice much but would play on game day. I don't know, maybe it's fine at running backs, but I think at some point you got to set a tone as well. It's one thing when you're L'Jarius Sneed and you haven't given up a touchdown all year. You've earned it. I don't know that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who seems routinely to miss holes and, you know, have some things lacking in his game, has really earned the right to be a part-time practice player and for you to be able to keep discipline in the organization.
I think if there was somebody other than like Deneric Prince knocking down his door, that we would question his roster spot more thoroughly. But I don't know what Deneric Prince has done to ensure that Clyde Edwards-Helaire doesn't have a spot on the team. And when I say I think they'll have 4 running backs, I think it's because they picked somebody up at the end of the waiver claim, at the end of the initial 53. I think there's somebody out there who could help this team with a specific skill set that they don't have on the roster right now, which is that third down guy that can be, you know, a more reliable presence in the passing game and with pass pro than what they currently have on the roster. And maybe that guy doesn't materialize, but a lot of times there's some available running backs. I mean, the Chiefs gave up on Carlos Hyde pretty early in camp one year, and he ended up being like an 800-yard rusher. Yeah. Later that season. Like, there's guys available at that position.
Those guys aren't hard to find. That's you can find what he gives you. You can find in spades in this league. There's a lot of guys out there who can give you what he gives you.
You cannot find what Northland Injury Law gives you just anywhere. Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, helping people with serious injuries, car accidents, work accidents, falls, whatever the serious personal injury might be. Their attorneys have been serving KC for more than 40 years. They don't get paid unless they get money for their clients. That's right. They don't get paid unless you get paid. Northland Injury Law, voted #1 accident lawyer in Kansas City. Don't wait. Get compensated right now. If you have a case, text HURT. That's HURT. To 2222. That's HURT. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222 or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878 right now. Remember, the choice of a lawyer is an important one. It should not be based solely upon advertisements. If you've got a case, text HURT to 22222 to get connected 24/7. Louis Rees-Zammit. Nice little story. You know, is there even a reason to be looking at Louis Rees-Zammit, the little bit you saw in actual game action, Jeff?
No,
No?
not really. Not really. I mean, I think the whole point was that his appeal was with this kickoff rule, and didn't do much there. So yeah, I don't see where he fits. Now maybe he ends up being a guy you put on the practice squad and you try to develop him more and try to give him more time to figure it out. But yeah, for right now, I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it. Do you see it, Sam?
No, I mean it just seems like they're trying to find an excuse to put him on the roster at this point, and it's getting harder and harder to figure out what that excuse might be because he hasn't impressed on special teams. I think he's lost on offense right now, as any of us would be with the rules of playing, rugby, for example, in 3 months after we're introduced to the sport. So it's totally understandable where he is right now, but that is where he is right now. And that's not ready to actually meaningful contribute to an NFL team.
Yeah. Do you even see a reason to put him on the practice squad? I mean,
yes. I mean, because part of the reason I think he is where he is because you can't play fast when you don't know where you're supposed to go.
Yeah.
And you at least can see if that talent can improve once he is more familiar with everything that's around him.
Well, and also you get more exposure to, you're around a team during the season, you're watching film of other players, you're seeing more, I just think it's like Sam's right. It's just like, he's walked into a whole new universe, and they give him I don't think he's going to be, a great player, even like a productive player, but I think you give him a chance to try to grow and learn just because he's changed so much.
Do you agree with Tommy's point? The Australian breakdancer had better hips than LRZ. Are we on board with this?
Ray Gun?
Was that who the Australian?
Yeah, there's a woman too, wasn't it?
I don't know. So, my bad. That's a low bar there, man. That's a shot right there.
It's an Olympian.
We are talking that. Okay, I take that back. High bar. And the Olympian that canceled an entire sport for the Olympics. It seems like. Okay. How about the number 2 cornerback? Where do the Chiefs sit at number 2 corner? Did you see anybody, put a claim in for that job, Jeff?
Look, I feel like more and more it's going to be Jalen Watson is going to be out there almost by default, just because I don't see Josh Williams stepping up and taking it. Najee Johnson can't stay healthy. The other guys are really young. I guess Kelvin Joseph was the one guy, right? But wasn't he banged up too?
Yeah, he's been injured. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, really, Jalen Watson has probably over the time he's been here made the most plays and been the most reliable. And I feel like time's running out at this stage. So unless somebody just pulls an amazing rabbit out of a hat in the next 3 weeks, I think he's going to be the guy.
Tough Saturday for Josh Williams, Sam. It didn't go well for him.
Yeah, I mean, when we talked about running back, we talked about a position group that was foreseeably going to be problematic going into the season, before training camp even started. But I think the cornerbacks collectively have been the most disappointing group in training camp. And it's not because of performance, it's because of the lack of availability when there's very clearly a job up for grabs. And look, Najee Johnson's been dealing with a couple of injuries. He hasn't played football in a really long time. In 12 months, this tends to happen when you've got muscles working in a way that they haven't worked before. You tend to have some muscle injuries, and Najee Johnson didn't get to play in the first preseason game because of injury. Jalen Watson missed OTAs and mandatory camp. Now he's missed the first preseason game because of injury. I agree with Jeff. I think he's the leader in the clubhouse for that job. But it's because when he's been absent, there's been nobody who's grabbed that job. And it's a position that Steve Spagnuolo and Dave Merritt, that combination develops really well. And I think it prompted all of us to think losing L'Jarius Sneed is big, but that they would have some replacements ready to go. And those replacements haven't emerged yet here on August 13th.
Yeah, I think, Josh Williams had a bad day. I'm still willing to give him a shot to fight his way back into that job. But I don't know. I put it out there to, a couple of weeks ago now to Steve Spagnuolo, like, can you just have different guys for different matchups? And he's like, no, we're really looking for somebody to emerge. Like, does anybody have the potential to emerge? Like, do you see anybody that you're like, well, like the Kadarius Toney people, everyone they see talent. I don't see as much talent as people do, but I do see stop-start ability. I do see strength. I do see toughness. There's elements there. Is there a talent there that's not being realized, Jeff? Is there anyone that you've watched on this roster that you think like, well, he's got the ability, I just don't know where his head is?
It's Josh Williams. Right? I think he's got probably that whole group, probably the most talent if you remove McDuffie from the equation. But, he's the bigger guy, right? He seems to be the more athletic guy. But, yeah, he just can't figure it out. And, look, if you go back to even the start of last year, nobody was talking about L'Jarius Sneed like he was going to be one of the best corners in football when the season started. Like, he decided, I want this. Give me the opportunity to be this player. I think I can be this player for you. And Spagnuolo was like, yeah, we're going to give you that shot. And he grabbed it. And I think that's part of it, is just like these guys aren't doing it. And so that has nothing to do with talent. It's a mentality. Maybe some of these guys, what could happen when you have a really successful team is some guys get comfortable just riding on the train. And now you have to have guys who need to step up and drive the train. And they're not doing it.
Sam, you've been a big Shamari Connor guy. I mean, could he be the guy to step up and have that kind of impact?
Yeah, I mean, they're asking Shamari Connor to do a lot. I mean, they're asking him to really switch positions from where he was most comfortable in college. Now, he did play the nickel in high school, which confused me because I don't usually typically hear that cornerbacks in high school actually have a nickel role, but that was primarily his role in high school. Like when there were 3 wide receiver sets, he would play the nickel. But, he really hasn't done that in the NFL. So I think they're already asking a lot. Like there's a little bit of an experiment with Shamari Connor at cornerback. I just think it's what they'll go with to lead off. Having said that, the past week or so, Trent McDuffie's been playing a lot of slot again. And I still think it's not going to be out of the equation for Steve Spagnuolo to say, wait a minute, there's nobody that did this job better in the league last year than Trent McDuffie did it. Maybe we shouldn't mess with that. Yeah. But you've got to have then 2
Where does Connor go then?
On the outside. Well, Connor can still play safety. He's still your dime guy. And look, I think what it's shown us, and the reason I point out that this has been going on for the last week or so with Trent McDuffie at least getting some snaps in the slot, it just shows Steve Spagnuolo still doesn't know where he's going in week 1. And that's because the cornerbacks have not told him where he should go for the first couple of weeks, for the first 3 weeks now of training camp.
Yeah, they say if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't really have one. Maybe if you have 5 corners, you don't really have one.
If you don't have, let's just stop it. If you have 7 wide receivers, you don't have one. That's the phrase.
Yeah. Well, you also don't have a blitz package, which you don't have. That's going to go downhill.
Like, Trent McDuffie lining up in the slot, I think that might, as much as I said he was the best guy at that position last year, I actually think that might be the reason that they worry about moving Trent McDuffie out of the slot, is because there's nobody who disguises cornerback blitzes better than Steve Spagnuolo does as a defensive coordinator. And Trent McDuffie studies his butt off, so he disguises his own blitzes really well. I don't know who does that this year. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's a mystery right now, and we've got 2 days of training camp practice left yet, and I can guarantee you Steve Spagnuolo had wanted to have these answers by now.
David Starnes, Allstate Insurance, has the answer when it comes to covering all the important things in your world, home, business, life, even things like motorcycles, boats, ATVs. Get with Dave. He'll have you covered. With David Starnes, Allstate, it's not just about fender benders. Nope. Beyond traditional safeguards, roadside assistance, transportation expense. Elevate your coverage. Elevate your confidence and drive worry-free. Give Dave and his crew a call. Visit them online or stop in to any of their local locations, including locations like North Kansas City, Liberty, Branson, and Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave. He'll give you peace of mind today, the things in your life most important to you. They got 2 sacks in that game, Jeff, against the Jaguars. Both of them were by linebackers, which means they were having to pressure elsewhere. Chris Jones, how dependent upon they had a decent game against the Lions without him, but certainly were much, much better when they got him back. How dependent is this Chiefs defense on Chris Jones?
Heavily. I would probably say the drop off is they become 50% of what they are when he's not playing. And, again, it's like I don't want to take anything away from a preseason game, but he's the best defensive tackle in football. He's probably one of the top 10 players in football. He's probably going to be a Hall of Famer the way his career is going. And just as he is to this defense, what Kelce is to the offense. He is the fix for everything that can go wrong around it. And I just, if you think about that defensive line, I think they probably would be average at best. And given what we're talking about with the cornerback situation, which is going to affect, like I said, going to affect their blitz package a lot if they can't find reliability out there. But he's going to have to play huge. He's going to have to be a wrecking crew once again. And at his age, that becomes harder and harder to pull off.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think? Chris Jones, how vital is it that he be healthy all season?
Yeah, I think he's the second most important player on their team, even above Travis Kelce. I mean, if you look at last year's Super Bowl just as a microcosm of this, I think the list of guys you say, if this guy was hurt, if they didn't have this guy for the Super Bowl, do they still win? I mean, how many guys do we come up with? Patrick Mahomes for sure. I think you still put Travis Kelce on the list because even if he doesn't have 150 yards receiving in a game, he just completely opens things up for other guys. But Chris Jones is third on that list. Trent McDuffie's probably on that list as well. He had a really good game in the Super Bowl. But he's a guy that, to Jeff's point, you can bust a coverage, but he's already busted into the backfield, and he's wrecked the play. And he did that on a play that should have been a touchdown with Brock Purdy, but he's got Chris Jones right in his face late in that game to hold the 49ers to a field goal in overtime. I just, last year your answer was twofold. We can take away our number one wide receiver, and then we've got Chris Jones making sure you don't get enough time to throw to numbers 2 and 3. They already have eliminated that number one wide receiver thing. If you also eliminate the 2s and 3s because you're not pressuring the backfield, I mean, yeah, they're incredibly dependent on him. It's where everyone else gets number one matchup or one-on-one matchups, and it's why their defensive ends have to win. I mean, George Karlaftis has to have a year. Mike Dana's got to have a year.
Do they need more help at that spot? Matthew Judon wants a contract. Haason Reddick is demanding a trade. Chiefs are $13-14 million under the cap. Jeff, should they be exploring the idea of trading for one of these guys?
Yeah. I mean, you can explore it, but you're not getting any discounts. I mean, once guys are in those situations, they're not looking to, Matthew Judon is, it's one situation, but Haason Reddick is almost baffling the way that situation is played out, where he hasn't even been to the Jets. They traded for him. And generally, when you make a deal for a guy like that, you got a deal worked out and you're ready to pull the trigger. And so I don't think, one, they couldn't afford him, but two, I think those kind of headaches you don't want to be dealing with. I think they've made it clear that they don't want to be playing those kind of games. They did it for Chris Jones, who was a homegrown product. I don't think they would do it for an outside guy, not for a second.
Haason Reddick is on his fourth team in 5 years. But he's at double-digit sacks each of the last 4 years. That, to me, is like immovable object meets irresistible force, is how I described it earlier today. You have a guy who clearly cannot find a home, so he can't be the easiest guy to work with. And then you have the Jets, who are just a disaster, right? So, I don't even know who to blame. It's like two sides that you would normally just be like, well, it's their fault, have come together to make it almost impossible to figure out who's really to blame here. I think it's amazing. I don't think the Chiefs can afford whatever Reddick's asking for, big picture. I don't think there's any interest from them because of the price tags. I mean, they might answer the phone and say, what do you got in mind? But they can't really be doling out money when they're trying to sign Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Nick Bolton, right? That's where their money's going to go, is on their homegrown guys. Oh, yeah, and by the way, largely the guys who make Patrick Mahomes happy as well. That's one of the things, too. You're not letting both those linemen go and making Patrick Mahomes happy.
Well, right? With Judon, I think you just decide if it's worth the price for 1 year. I mean, he's a free agent after the year, right? And so I think you just determine
I don't think he shows up to anyone. Well, maybe he would for the Chiefs because you're a prime Super Bowl contender. But you trade for those guys, they want their contract to accept it. That's
going to be the question with Judon is he's 32 years old already. I think his expectations are probably misguided if he thinks he's going to get like a 3-year contract from somebody if he gets traded. He's obviously already under contract for his age 33 season. I mean, yeah, the Chiefs should be interested in a guy like that. If you can get him without paying, premium dollars for a second year or a third year. I don't know what the cost that the Patriots would ask for Matt Judon is. I think his cap number is about 15, and the Chiefs have about 17. So you're basically deciding like this is the missing piece. But I look at this was not an area where I thought the Chiefs were in trouble going into the season.
What do you think now?
But I did not think that we said this in the last podcast. I mean, I thought Felix struggled in the preseason game. I don't know when Charles Omenihu's coming back. The Chiefs did not sign a defensive free agent the entire offseason without signing a defensive free agent. I think they need depth. And the question is, I think Judon starts, and then Mike Dana suddenly becomes your depth, and he's a guy that can move around and play defensive tackle as well and rush on third downs. Like, I think that's an addition that would be intriguing, depending on the cost twofold. The team's asking price, but also does the player require a new contract if you sign him? Because I think that would be a non-starter.
Yeah. And if he goes on the market, there's going to be heavy bidding for someone like that.
Yeah, for sure. Get your seal coating now before the weather turns cold. Gann Asphalt and Concrete is booking up fast. So if you need seal coating for your parking lot or anything, Gann Asphalt and Concrete with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. That's right. Every one of their employees is one of their employees, not picking up folks on the way to the job and trying to instruct them on site. And every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. You can find Gann Asphalt and Concrete online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Kingsley Suamataia got the first unit treatment in and out in a series. Did they miss an opportunity to get him more reps, Jeff?
I would have preferred to see him play more. And I understand the reaction that can happen when you see Hollywood Brown go down on that first series. I was in Green Bay a couple of weeks ago talking to their GM, Brian Gutekunst, and the first thing he said was, I wish I could bubble wrap all these guys. And I'm sure that's the same reaction Andy Reid had as soon as Hollywood went down. Like, anybody who's playing a position where I don't have some decent depth, I can't afford to have him be out there. I feel like they took him out so fast. He's got the job. They like where he's heading, but you still need the reps. And that's the thing. You had a great chance to get those against, pretty good pass rushers out there. And Josh Allen's one of the best pass rushers in the league for the Jaguars. And so I'm hoping that he'll get a little more run in the next couple of games. Maybe see him against the Montez Sweat against the Bears or Aiden Hutchinson. But yeah, I think that I was surprised they pulled him that fast.
Yeah. Sam, were you shocked at how quick they yanked him?
I was, just because usually the entire offensive line gets a series with the backup quarterback as well. So I just think we'll see it on Saturday instead. So if they do this on Saturday, I think it's a different conversation. The answer would be a definitive yes. He needs to get more snaps, because he does need to get more snaps before this preseason's over. But I anticipate that we'll see it on Saturday against the Lions instead. Did
we like what we saw out of him? Right? Like, did you think that he was a guy that could handle his own, or were you like, oh, geez, this is scary sledding, Jeff?
It's hard. I mean,
incredible 7 snaps.
I was going to say, I mean, he didn't really get a chance. It's like watching a boxing match end after like a round. Like, what'd you think of what you saw, or half a round? It was just, they didn't even get to feel each other out. So, yeah, I didn't really know what to make of it, except that, again, I think they were worried about him getting hurt, and they felt like there were better opportunities to get him playing time. But the skill set is there. He's athletic. He doesn't have the longest arms in the world, but I think they want to make it work, and they want to keep him healthy.
Yeah, and you can understand that. I think it was so few snaps for sure, but the fact that you didn't see him. I mean, isn't that the job of an offensive lineman? Nothing was a disaster, right? That's pretty good, isn't it, Sam? That like we didn't go, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, and no penalties too, right? I'm interested to see him in a longer look for sure. And I mean, even like you talk to scouts, for example, and the way they watch a game, they'll tell you it's hard to see the offensive lineman until you actually go back on the tape and watch them in action. So it's hard to see the 7 guys. And just to be honest, I go back and watch every regular season game multiple times. I'm not watching the preseason games in the same manner I watch the regular season games. So I think he's a little bit hard for me to give a definitive evaluation about. But they were pretty pleased with, and they've been pleased with the past couple of weeks. Like he has been ramping up in terms of his grasp of the offense and his own job within it, while Wanya Morris has been up and down. He's had inconsistency throughout training camp in a way that Kingsley, I think, has steadily improved. And that's why you see that. I mean, the signal we should all take when he only plays one series, whether or not Wanya Morris was injured or not, is he's the guy. I mean, it's not because he started. It's because he played so little. He's the guy. They think they've seen enough from him already in camp.
Yeah, I agree. That's the biggest takeaway for me, too, is that he is going to be the guy and they don't want to get him hurt. And they'll live with whatever it is, but they wouldn't live with him if they thought he was going to be a disaster. So I do think there's a level of confidence. I've heard good things as well. They really liked how much, volume they were dumping on him and that he's not taking a step back, right? He's not drowning in all the things that they're giving him. And, I thought his comments today, he was quite, he said, listen, I got out there and he said, Hines Allen is one of the best in the business. And I was like, okay, I can do this. I can play with these guys. And he sounded legitimately confident. Didn't sound like a guy who was trying to sell you on that. He sounded like he came away from that game going, maybe he didn't win everything perfectly, but he came away from that game knowing that he belongs in this league. And I think if you've got confidence and you've got athleticism, which they love is athleticism, that goes a long way at that spot. He's going to have some tough days, there's no doubt, and he'll get down. But Patrick Mahomes helps a lot, because he knows how to move in the pocket. He knows how to avoid sacks. He has the eyes in the back of the helmet. Like, he helps a lot. And he's going to make, Kingsley Suamataia feel pretty good on a lot of days.
That's a great point, Stern. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has the second best sack avoidance in the league a year ago behind Josh Allen. And I do think confidence plays a major part in that position. And sometimes confidence is misguided to the end result rather than the process itself. And if the end result is your quarterback stays upright because he's really good at avoiding sacks, like that could start to snowball for him and help him become an actual more productive player too.
Tommy said at least he lined up on side, referencing Juwan Taylor. Tommy always has a long-standing feud with Juwan Taylor. So Collinsworth ain't going to be talking about him on.
Is there anybody that Tommy doesn't have a long-standing feud?
No, his biggest feud is with Eric Eager. So that's one to keep in mind. Scouting report, Ben says at least he's not Orlando Brown, right? Like, who will be better, Kingsley Suamataia or Orlando Brown? Ultimately in their career, who will be regarded as a better left?
Oh man, how do you quantify that?
Orlando Brown has a Pro Bowl, but I mean, I think if you do a decent job with Holmes, you'll make it. Yeah. He might have a couple, one at right, one at left.
I think you can answer that question better after this year. I mean, Kingsley Suamataia is going to face a lot. He's going to face a murderer's row of pass rushers this year.
Here's a better way to phrase that, Jeff. Would you take Orlando Brown's last year in Kansas City for Kingsley Suamataia's first year in Kansas City? Because I think the answer is yes. I think if that's his first year, knowing that he'd get better, I think you'd take it.
Oh, if it was where Orlando Brown gave them at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If that's how it goes, yeah. It'd be promising. But we'll see how it plays out for him. He's got a lot of guys he's going to face. Nick Bosa and Myles Garrett. And
TJ Watt's on the schedule.
TJ Watt.
Max Crosby's on the schedule twice.
Max Crosby twice.
Yeah.
Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa twice. Yeah. We're gonna find out real fast what he's like.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's going to get his chance to prove himself. I'll highlight a couple things. Beery Man says, or Beery Mister says, hit that like button. I like that. Yes, it does us a lot of good. The like button, the love button ain't gonna, it didn't cost nothing. So go ahead and chime in there. And Brad said too, and I can't find it. I was trying to scroll back. It's been a while. Said, it's not going to scare you, right? Like it's not going to run up and bite you. So go ahead and hit that like button if you would. We'd appreciate it. Does a lot of work. And, of course, also thanks to our sponsors. Go ahead and support them. Like David Starnes Allstate Insurance, serving the greater Kansas City area, covering all the important things in your world, home, business, life, even the fun stuff like motorcycles, boats, ATVs, you name it. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave. He'll give you peace of mind today. The things that are most important in life. Gann Asphalt and Concrete for 30 years serving Kansas City, the very best. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. And Kansas City's voted number one accident lawyer in Kansas City is Northland Injury Law. Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers. They don't get paid unless you get paid. Text HURT 22222. Again, that's HURT, HURT to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. The choice of a lawyer is an important one. It should not be based solely upon advertisements. For Jeffri Chadiha from the NFL Network, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red